I've been having a bit of a laugh over here on this channel, RC and CNC. It's a video by an Australian chap who's obviously works on or has worked on Australian Navy Seahawks in some form or another. And he's made a little video showing off the fuel tanks, etc., etc., the helicopter. It seems to have attracted comments from some real muppets in the world who have got no idea of reality. And in one particular case, we have a Greg Lavy. He seems to be quite vocal and wants to make a big song and a dance that he is the Mr. Simpleton. And he quotes a passage from an article written by this Maxwell Chapman, who was highlighted on another Truther channel. It's hilarious to read it, and there is no way this Maxwell Chapman even could have possessed a pilot's license. He is so stupid. But truthers believe rubbish like that with no facts or proof. They're so simple, they'll believe anything. Clowns, really. But let's have a look down here. One at Greg's. Greg has started these conversations demanding where 36,000 gallons go in a 747. We shall come back to that in a while. But let's look at this particular entry of his. So here's a 747 schematic. Look at the amounts in US gallons that are supposedly held in the wings, all across the bottom of the wing, etc. 14,521 gallons. Interesting number. Let's remember that one. Just on the bottom of the plane, so that is one pool on the bottom of the plane and one on each wing. So that's 3 pools on a plane and inside the wings. Are you fucking kidding me, boys? Well, I presume he's talking about swimming pools. Well, the truthers can't picture large numbers, so they always equate to something stupid like swimming pools, London buses, Camaros. It's whatever's easy for them to understand, I suppose. But in the real world, we deal with figures. And there's some rubbish here about CIA mind control, and that he needs a diaper to a nappy, if you're English, because he's about to shit himself because he thinks we're all fucking stupid and we need to grow up. And so he references us to this fucking schematic. It makes you all look like retarded, indulgent necromancers. We're retarded? Right, let's have a look. And he says, you can all suck my cock, eh? All 2 inches of it. Oh, he's not very a big boy then, is he? But let's have a look at this 747 schematic, shall we? And we go to the 747 schematic. And what do we find? We find a 4-engine plane. But it clearly says up in the top right corner there, A340-500. And down here in large print in letters and numbers, we've got A340-500. Yes, it's showing the locations of the tanks, but this is a aircraft diagram to show where the hazardous materials are located. Now, that's not a 747-400 or any 747. It's an Airbus, Greg. So I think you're a bit of a clown, really, aren't you? Because you need to look at these figures.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Greg. Greg's a clown. And we shall now show him where his 36,000 gallons will go on a 747-400. And that 14,521 gallon figure he quoted also can go on a 747-400. despite him using that schematic of a 340-500. Let's take a look. Oh, look at that. 25,000 gallons in just 2 tanks. And we have a total of 53,864 gallons in the entire aeroplane. And if you've got the 747-400 with the optional horizontal stabilizer tank, that increases its capacity to 57,164 gallons. So Greg, now feeling a bit foolish? You don't seem to be done much research here, have you, boy? It is clear that Greg thinks he's Einstein here, but in fact, we all can see he's one of these, a clown. But his comedy routine isn't finished quite yet. There's another one of his comments we've got to have a look at. That's very, very hilarious.
And now let's see what Greg has to say for himself in this comment. He's claiming he's got the facts that common sense would eradicate on sight. What does that mean? We've got a 747 Boeing has 3 tanks in each wing. Technically, yes. Those hold in a rank 6,472 gallons. Never heard of one of those things on a 747. An outer tank one with 1,623 gallons. Another outer tank 2 of 9,182 gallons. A centre tank of 14,512 gallons. And the same on the other side of the wing, with the exception of the centre tank. A rear centre tank of 2,015 gallons. A tail trim tank of 2,209 gallons on one side, and another one on the opposite side of 2,209 gallons, bringing a total of 55,499.
Over the years, I have worked on many 747s. Many years ago, I first worked on the 747-100 with Pratt & Whitney JT9 engines, as well as the 747-200 with RB211 engines by Rolls-Royce. And finally, over the last 20 years, I've had the fortunate pleasure of working 747-400s with initially Rolls-Royce RB211s, then with General Electric CF6s, and also Pratt & Whitney PW4000 engines. These terms inner, outer and trim tank and rear centre tank are not found on a Boeing, but let's double check. Firstly, let's have a look in the actual aircraft's maintenance manual. Nope, can't see anything listed here for trim tanks. Can I? No trim tanks, inner tanks. All I can see is access doors, fuel pumps, valves, pipework. Interesting, really. And finally, we get to a diagram. Tank identification: reserve tank, surge tank, main tank 2, centre tank, horizontal stab tank. Where is the rear trim tank? Where the centre tank? Can't see that. Again, main tank. They don't seem to exist on these tanks that Greg's on about. Don't exist on a jumbo. Well, we'll double check in the weight and balance part of the operations manual then for the 747-400. Here we have the tank layout of the aircraft. And it clearly highlights how much of the wing is taken up by fuel and how much is left for the flying controls, etc, etc. Let's have a look at the designations by Boeing. We have a surge tank at the wingtips, or the outer part of the wing. This is normally a dry area and will facilitate any overspill of fuel to leave the aircraft, and to let, during the refueling process, the escape of the fumes, to vent through and out to prevent overpressurization of the wing. Inboard of that we have the reserve tank, tank 2 and tank 3 on the right hand wing. Then we have main tank 1, then we have main tank 2, then we have the centre tank, and then main 3, main 4, and we have a jumbo here with the optional extra of a stabiliser tank. I can't see no inner, outer tanks or trim tanks mentioned there, or rear centre tanks. So Greg, you got me to thinking, where have I heard those terms for tank identification before? Well, so it so happens I also qualified to work on Airbus products, such as the A330-300, like this one, and the A340-600, like this one. And as part of the A340-600 training course, we're also educated on the A340-500. We best take a look at some of the Airbus facts and figures then, shall we? First off, the A340-200-300 series of aircraft. Look, they call their tanks outer, inner, centre, trim, but unfortunately these aren't the fuel quantities that our clown Greg was talking about. But at least we've got the terminology correct. Now we'll look at the A340-600. Again, we've got outer tanks, inner tanks, centre tank, trim tank, and the figures are starting to look like Greg's, but we're missing an extra tank. But we're on the right track now, so we'll have a look at the 500. And look at this, the 500. We've got outer tanks, inner tanks 1 and 4, inner tanks 2 and 3, centre tank. We've got a rear centre tank, trim tank. He does like getting his confusing A340-500s to 747s. It's like he doesn't know what the aircraft are. But let's have a compare of his figures. Looking at these figures, Greg, you're not far off there, are you? We've got, as you say, an outer tank that holds 6,472. Oh, sorry, you call it inner tank. Well, there we are. Inner tank 1 and 4 hold 6,473 gallons. What's a gallon between friends? Outer tank 1 holds 1,623 gallons. Well, there is only one outer tank, and it's called another gallon out. Yeah, not bad. 1624 gallons. And you've got another outer tank. No. It's an inner tank. It's 9,183. Again, you're a gallon out. Well, you've got the centre tank, right? I suppose you can't get that wrong. Again, you're a gallon out, or a few gallons out on that one. 14,523, and you got it down as 14,512. Got a rear centre tank. 5,295%. And you say only holds 2015. Bit out there. And the Dash 500 only has a one trim tank at 2,200. 0.9, giving us a grand total of 56 plus 1,000 gallons. You're a bit out there, Greg, but your figures obviously relate to this Airbus, not the 747 as stated. What's that, Greg? What else? What else have you written? Oh, let's have a look what else you wrote in that comment, shall we? Yes, once again he waffles on about swimming pools, etc., and how this aircraft would be heavy, and all that fuel on board when it lands would be uncontrollable. Well, Greg, this is like having to teach a child. Strangely enough, when an aircraft gets refueled, it becomes heavy, and when it takes off, it flies. Its engines are using that fuel. They are, as we say in the trade, turning and burning that fuel. And as they burn that fuel, they consume it. The quantity goes down. And when the aircraft comes to land, it is a hell of a lot lighter than when it took off. So completely controllable. Then our clown waffles on a bit more and about how he is so much superior and he's got this great intellect, blah, blah, blah. Then he brings in more conspiracies, showing off that he is obviously a Holocaust denier because he claims that there are only thousands of people killed, not the millions as everyone is told. Pathetic little boy. And then his plandemic, I think you mean to say pandemic, not plandemic, you fool. But again, he's hinting at this coronavirus is a hoax. Well, sad little brain, sad little man. You need to grow up, go to school and study and get educated. Once again, for you, Greg, to make it simple, let's recap. This is a 747-400, and they're the fuel quantities in the tank. So your 36,000 gallons will go in it. Full stop. End of story. Easy. Oh yes, and one last thing, Greg. You said you've never seen fuel in broken wings in accidents. Well, there's a simple reason for that. Let me explain. Take this bucket. You fill it with liquid. The liquid stays in that bucket, does it not? Now, if you were to drill loads and loads of holes in that bucket, what would happen to the liquid? Would it A, stay in the bucket, or B, start flowing out of those holes and the bucket would eventually empty and there'd be no liquid inside it? Come on, Greg, it's not that hard a question, is it? Okay, you're the simpleton, we know. Well, the bucket would empty, wouldn't it? There'd be no liquid in it. So if you took a wing and put a hole in it, the fuel would drain out of it. Simples. Let's take a look at wing construction, shall we, for you?
A wing under construction. This is the easiest way to explain where the fuel goes for you simpletons out there. First of all, we have the wing box, which is the main structural part of the wing. This consists of the front spar and the rear spar, and skin above and below, and in between the spars are ribs, many of them. These ribs act as tank baffles that restrict the movement of the fuel in flight with various manoeuvres and attitude changes. Keeps sloshing down to a minimum. On the front of the front wing spar, we have the ancillary part of the wing, which is basically the leading edge aerofoil section with the leading edge flight control devices. Whether the manufacturer calls them flaps or slats, they're there. And in this void will be all the electrical looms out to the engines, and if the aircraft requires pneumatic piping, it will be there as well. This is the rear face of the rear spar, and attached to the rear spar is the undercarriage, all the flaps and the ailerons, and all the hydraulic pipework goes down here, the back here. This is where the hydraulic fluids will be transported down pipework and all the necessary electrical looms. Simples. And the fuel goes in here. That is where the fuel goes. Simples, really. It keeps the weight of the aircraft all on its centre of gravity, and fuel relieves wing bending stresses in flight. Prevents excessive upward bending of the wing by the lift force generated by the wing.
So, Greg, have you worked it out yet? Have you seen what happens? Have you worked it out with that picture of that wing? You put a great big hole in it, or you break that wing, the liquid will flow out, disappear. If you're lucky. Unfortunately, if you're not, in most cases, it will be burnt in the ensuing fire in the crash. That's why you will never see, or you will very rarely see, traces of fuel at a crash site. So, Greg, you're definitely not him. You are definitely not him. You are definitely one of them. A clown. And a final reminder for you, Greg. This is a 747-400. Take a close look. Memorise it. Remember, it's got a different fuel quantity than one of these, which is a 340, 600, 500. Look how different they are. So stop being a clown, Greg. Pull that head out of your rectum. Go and get an education, learn something, study, research, and stop being a jackass of a red pill truther who makes up numbers and hasn't got a clue. Goodbye for now.